Everyone, I don't know if you can hear me. Hopefully you can. This is a new thing. 4 folks are watching or waiting. Okay, people are telling me that it's working, so we're just gonna keep going. I think everyone sees this on a little bit of a delay from me, so um, I can't get feedback in real time. But just quickly, we're doing a little test talk, a very short thing here on shrubs. Just a few interesting shrubs you might try for the Front Range here in Colorado. I know we've got master gardeners and probably some agents on the line. Listen to this. Mostly we're doing this to give you the information if you're the master gardeners, but really to get feedback on this YouTube live thing and see if it is good quality. So we think if we want to do future classes this way. So a few shrubs. So the first thing to think about before you think about what shrubs you're going to plant is why you're planting them. Are you looking for something ornamental like this butterfly bush, really pretty plants, or is it to provide structure in the landscape? That's another big thing we use shrubs for, whether it's really formal hedges like you see here, or like a more informal structural element like just a barrier or a shrub that divides a space. There are also like specialty uses for shrubs. We might plant them to, for a fruit, that we want to eat, or like a rose hip that maybe has some value in making a tea or something like that. In this case, this is obviously raspberries, which are a very specialized sort of shrub that you might plant. We're not really going to be talking about that. Either way, you want to be thinking about a couple things when you pick. You want to think about the site. Is it a wet site? Is it a dry site? We have a lot of dry conditions here in Colorado, but you might have a specific site that's wet. It's a low spot that never drains, or it's near a stream or a lake or something like that, and you want to pick a shrub accordingly. Is it some place where the shrub's going to become in contact with a lot of salt, either through irrigation water or off of like de-icing salts off of a sidewalk or something like that? You want to think about the climate, or maybe even the microclimate. Is this a particularly warm area in the yard, a cool area in the yard, things like that. A big thing with shrubs is you want to think about the potential mature size. You want to think about how big they're going to get when they're large, like you can see in this picture here with the juniper. That juniper right now doesn't look too bad, but years of repeated shearing as it tries to overgrow its spot will lead to it looking rather thin and crummy on that side. And then a very big thing for shrubs is you want to be thinking about what seasons they have interest, or they bring interest to the landscape. What month of the year do they bloom? What color is the bloom? Do they have other interests, like, is the fruit interesting? Is the fall color interesting? Do they have something that is interesting in the winter, like the twigs of red twig dogwood? And you want to be maybe trying to pick shrubs that have multiple seasons of interest, or shrubs that have different seasons of interest, so there's always something out in the yard to look at. So without further ado, let's just real quick, five or six shrubs that you might think about for the Front Range that do pretty well here. One of my favorites is serviceberry, which is a little confusing in of itself because there are many different serviceberries, many different species. Probably the best adapted ones for Colorado are Amelanchier alnifolia, or Utah ensis. You can also get Canadensis. It's not quite as drought tolerant. But either way, no matter which species you get, serviceberry has Oh, and the feed may have been lost. So one of the quirks about this YouTube thing is it takes better internet than I actually have probably to do from home, but that's what we're trying to learn. So thanks for bearing with me if it's looking funky on your end. But I'll just finish the talk. It's not very long. So serviceberry has 3 seasons of interest. It has beautiful white flowers in the spring, no matter which of the species you're planting. You can see a couple examples here, which develop into this fruit, which looks a little like a blueberry, and it gets darker and darker from a reddish pink to a purple that's so dark it verges on black sometimes near the fall. The fruit is edible. Birds love it. It's edible for humans as well. If you eat it when it's ripe, it's actually quite good, but if you eat it before it's ripe or after it's ripe, you'll be disappointed. But either way, it's attractive. And then the fall color of serviceberry is also quite nice. It ranges from a yellow to a red, sometimes with, an orange to a red, sometimes with just all the shades in between. So lots of seasons of interest, good for wildlife. Also, at least Amelanchier alnifolia and Amelanchier utensis are drought tolerant. Canadensis, again, is not quite. But so a good shrub for the Front Range, one you can think about and pretty readily available. Another one that's maybe a little more controversial, but I like a lot, is Apache plume. This is Flugia paradoxa. It's a shrub that maybe tops out at 3-4 feet tall in some cases. It's a native to the West. It has very interesting flowers and then fruit. The puffy parts is actually the fruit. The flowers are small, kind of a little off-white colored. To me, this is just a very Western plant. It looks like it belongs on the plains. You can see, someone riding by on a horse would be right in context with this plant. And I think it just has a very Western character to it. Very tough plant for around these parts. One I think we could think about planting a little more of. It does look a little like a tumbleweed in the winter, and the texture of the plant in general pisses some people off, but I'm a big fan of it. You can see a picture of the flowers opening early in the year and the small little leaves it has. Another plant that I really love is fernbush. It gets its name because the leaves, you can hopefully see in this picture, have like a little bit of they look like the leaves of a fern a little bit. Those leaves are semi-evergreen, so they'll stay on the plant until the weather gets really cold. Some winters, it's almost the whole winter, so it provides a little bit of interest in that season. But the main reason you'd plant it is for the flowers, which will start sometime near the middle of June, maybe more towards the end of June. And there'll be some flowers in the plant through the end of the growing season. So you can see they're showy, they're white. A variety of pollinators just love them. There's a close-up of one. I think I meant to put this in the talk because I thought it had a picture of a bumblebee visiting the flower, but I put the wrong picture in the talk. Still, though, pretty flowers. Also very, very drought tolerant. So just a real winner for around here. Gets you winter. A little bit of interest from the evergreen leaves, the white flowers. One I plant all over. Probably actually I plant it too much in my own yard. But anyways, one I really like. I threw in another plant here that's a little different in terms of its interest, and that's skunkbush sumac. The people who named this plant were doing themselves any favors in terms of marketing it. It is not particularly smelly, even though it has that name. There is a bit of a sharp odor, I'd say, if you rub the twigs. It's not bad smelling, and you're only going to smell it, again, if you're in there rubbing the twigs or pruning the plant or something like that. So don't let the name deter you. This is the western species of these kind of low-growing sumacs. There's aromatic sumac, Russa aromatica, which is the eastern one. There are many different selections of this out there that range from being ground covers to being a little bit taller shrubs. It's also native to Colorado. You'll see it out when you're hiking in the foothills. It's good for ground cover. It's good for like bank stabilizations or filling in a blank area in your yard. If you don't water them, they stay pretty polite. If you give them water, they get kind of monstrous. So you can see one of the best uses, I think, for it, which is to kind of fill in an area as a ground cover that needs very little maintenance once established. If there's just an area that you want to fill up, works great. I've seen it in street medians around the North Denver metro. dense enough to keep out most weeds, beautiful orange-red fall color, and very xeric once established. I think it's a winner we could plant. We do plant a fair amount of, and we could keep planting. This particular is autumn amber, which is has a very nice fall color and is lower growing. Another really common one is Growlow sumac, which is even a little more closer to the ground, and probably a little more common in the nursery trade. A tree that's not, a shrub that's not native to this trade that you might consider, and I threw this one in specifically for barriers. If you want a large shrub to provide some screening, which is a pretty common question we get at the extension office, is wayfaring tree viburnum. It has, again, these thick textured leaves that are hang on the tree very late in the year. It's kind of semi-evergreen. They turn purple and then hang on until the weather gets very cold, sometime usually in December. If it's a mild winter, they may hang on the shrub throughout the winter. It's also a plant that has truly 3 seasons of interest, which makes it pretty exciting because it can fill a lot of roles. So it has pretty white flowers, which become these very interesting raisin kind of sized fruits that start out red and then turn purple and eventually black. Wildlife enjoys them. I don't believe that they are for human consumption. They might be edible, but if so, they're not tasty. I would not eat them. And there you can see the leaf turning purple in the fall. So you have the flowers, the fruit, and the fall color, a real winner. So it's very dense, good for screens. And that semi-evergreen nature means it's a screen even into the winter. So I think it's a great plant if you want one for the border of the yard. Pretty tough plant. I'd say lower water use plant. There are smaller versions of it out there. Mohican is a smaller selection, maybe tops out at 4-5 feet, opposed to the 12-ish feet for the wayfaring tree viburnum. And then there's this very common cross of viburnum lantana on the market, which is called Allegheny viburnum, which has a little more interesting leaf and a little more upright habit. Maybe tops out at 10 feet. And Plant Select promoted this one a number of years ago, so I always put it in the talks. A final shrub that I've talked about, which is one of the ones I think we just underplant kind of criminally along the Front Range, is mountain mahogany. There's 3 species of mountain mahogany that are common along the Front Range. I think this is the one that fits in a lot of landscapes best, but the other ones are nice too. This is Cerciocarpus latifolius, curl-leaf mountain mahogany. It is evergreen, so the leaves rather stay on all winter. They do kind of get more of a yellow-green color in the winter. Native shrub, it'll actually tolerate some shearing if you need to make a hedge. Very low water use. It has this really unique flower and fruit. It's kind of wispy, looks a little like a feather if you're not into botanical terms. It's feathery. And it's really pretty, especially in the mornings and evenings when the light catches it just right. Again, a real Western shrub with a real Western character, and I think we just ought to plant more of that stuff in our landscapes along the Front Range. Tough, evergreen. I already said all that. So anyways, thanks for joining us just for this little test talk on shrubs. Hopefully if you're a master gardener, you got something out of it. Thanks for tuning in on short